My name is Jill Zahniser. I will be reading Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I'm going to read a section from the beginning of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings and a couple events in the childhood of Maya Angelou. And she's living in Arkansas, Stamps, Arkansas. Crossing the black area of Stamps, which in childhood's narrow measure seemed a whole world, we were obliged by custom to stop and speak to every person we met, and Bailey, her brother, felt constrained to spend a few minutes playing with each friend. There was a joy in going to town with money in our pockets. Bailey's pockets were as good as my own, and time on our hands, but the pleasure fled when we reached the white part of town. After we left Mr. Willie Williams' Dewdrop Inn, the last stop before White Folksville, we had to cross the pond and adventure the railroad tracks. We were explorers walking without weapons into man-eating animals' territory. In Stamps, the segregation was so complete that most black children didn't really absolutely know what whites looked like. Other than that, they were different, to be dreaded, and in that dread was included the hostility of the powerless against the powerful, the poor against the rich, the worker against the worked for, and the ragged against the well-dressed. I remember never believing that whites were really real. Many women who worked in their kitchens traded at our store, and when they carried their finished laundry back to town, they often set the big baskets down on our front porch to pull a singular piece from the starched collection and show either how graceful was their ironing hand or how rich and opulent was the property of their employers. I looked at the items that weren't on display. I knew, for instance, that white men wear shorts, as Uncle Willie did, and that they had an opening for taking out their things and peeing, and that white women's breasts weren't built into their dresses, as some people said, because I saw their brassieres in the baskets. But I couldn't force myself to think of them as people. People were Mrs. LaGrone, Mrs. Hendricks, Mama, Reverend Sneed, Lily B., Louise, and Rex. White folks couldn't be people because their feet were too small, their skin too white and see-through-y, and they didn't walk on the balls of their feet the way people did. They walked on their heels like horses. People were those who lived on my side of town. I didn't like them all, or in fact any of them very much, but they were people. These others, these strange, pale creatures that lived in their alien unlife, weren't considered folks. They were white folks. Thou shalt not be dirty, and thou shalt not be impudent were the two commandments of Grandmother Henderson upon which hung our total salvation. Each night in the bitterest winter, we were forced to wash faces, arms, necks, legs, and feet before going to bed. She used to add with a smirk that unprofane people can't control when venturing into profanity, and wash as far as possible, then wash possible. We would go to the well and wash in the ice-cold, clear water, grease our legs with the equally cold, stiff Vaseline, then tiptoe into the house. We wiped the dust from our toes and settled down for schoolwork, cornbread, clabbered milk, prayers, and bed, always in that order. Mama was famous for pulling the quilts off after we had fallen asleep to examine our feet. If they weren't clean enough for her, she took the switch. She kept one behind the bedroom door for emergencies and woke up the offender with a few aptly placed burning reminders. The area around the well at night was dark and slick, and boys told about how snakes love water, so that anyone who had to draw water at night and then stand there alone and wash knew that moccasins and rattlers, puff adders, and boa constrictors were winding their way to the well and would arrive just as the person washing got soap in her eyes. But Mama convinced us that not only was cleanliness next to godliness, dirtiness was the inventor of misery. The impudent child was detested by God and a shame to its parents and could bring destruction to its house and line. All adults had to be addressed as Mr., Mrs., Miss, Auntie, Cousin, Unc, Uncle, Bubba, Sister, Brother, and 1,000 other appellations indicating familiar relationship and the lowliness of the addressor. Everyone I knew respected these customary laws except for the Po White Trash children. Some families of Po White Trash lived on Mama's farmland behind the school. Sometimes a gaggle of them came to the store, filling the whole room, chasing out the air, and even changing the well-known scents. The children crawled over the shelves and into the potato and onion bins, twanging all the time in their sharp voices like cigar box guitars. They took liberties in my store that I would never dare, since Mama told us that the less you say to white folks, or even Po White Trash, the better. Bailey and I would stand solemn, quiet in the displaced air. But if one of the playful apparitions got close to us, I pinched it, partly out of angry frustration and partly because I didn't believe in its flesh reality. They called my uncle by his first name and ordered him around the store. He, to my crying shame, obeyed them in his limping dip, straight dip fashion. My grandmother, too, followed their orders, except that she didn't seem to be servile because she anticipated their needs. Here's sugar, Miss Potter, and here's baking powder. You didn't buy soda last month. You'll probably be needing some. Mama always directed her statements to the adults, but sometimes, oh, painful sometimes, the grimy, snotty-nosed girls would answer her, "Naw, Annie," to Mama, who owned the land they lived on, who forgot more than they would ever learn. If there was any justice in the world, God would strike them dumb at once. Just give us some extra soda crackers and some more mackerel. At least they never looked in her face, or I never caught them doing so. Nobody with a smidgen of training, not even the worst roustabout, would look right in a grown person's face. It meant the person was trying to take the words out before they were formed. The dirty little children didn't do that, but they threw their orders around the store like lashes from a cat-o'-nine tails. When I was around 10 years old, those scruffy children caused me the most painful and confusing experience I ever had with my grandmother. One summer morning, after I had swept the dirt yard of leaves, spearmint gum wrappers, and Vienna sausage labels, I raked the yellow-red dirt and made half moons carefully so that the design stood out clearly and mask-like. I put the rake behind the store and came through the back of the house to find Grandmother on the front porch in her big white apron. The apron was so stiff by virtue of the starch that it could have stood alone. Mama was admiring the yard, so I joined her. It truly looked like a flat redhead that had been raked with a big-toothed comb. Mama didn't say anything, but I knew she liked it. She looked over toward the school principal's house and to the right at Mr. McElroy's. She was hoping one of those community pillars would see the design before the day's business wiped it out. Then she looked upward at the school. My head had swung with hers, so just at about the same time, we saw a troop of Po White Trash kids marching over the hill and down by the side of the school. I looked to Mama for direction. She did an excellent job of sagging from her waist down, but from the waist up. She seemed to be pulling for the top of the oak tree across the road. Then she began to moan a hymn. Maybe not to moan, but the tune was so slow and the meter so strange that she could have been moaning. She didn't look at me again. When the children reached halfway down the hill, halfway to the store, she said without turning, "Sister, go on inside." I wanted to beg her, "Mama, don't wait for them. Come on inside with me. If they come in the store, you go in the bedroom and let me wait on them. They only frighten me if you're around. Alone, I know how to handle them." But of course, I couldn't say anything, so I went in and stood behind the screen door. Before the girls got to the porch, I heard their laughter crackling and popping like pine logs in a cooking stove. I suppose my lifelong paranoia was born in those cold, molasses-slow minutes. They came finally to stand on the ground in front of Mama. At first they pretended seriousness. Then one of them wrapped her right arm in the crook of her left, pushed out her mouth, and started to hum. I realized she was aping my grandmother. Another said, "Now, Helen, you ain't standing like her. This here's it." Then she lifted her chest, folded her arms, and mocked that strange carriage that was Annie Henderson. Another laughed, "Naw, you can't do it. Your mouth ain't pooch out enough. It's like this." I thought about the rifle behind the door, but I knew I'd never be able to hold it straight, and the .410, our sawed-off shotgun, which stayed loaded and was fired every New Year's night, was locked in the trunk, and Uncle Willie had the key on his chain. Through the fly-specked screen door, I could see that the arms of Mama's apron jiggled from the vibrations of her humming, but her knees seemed to have locked, as if they would never bend again. She sang on, no louder than before, but no softer either, no slower or faster. The dirt of the girls' cotton dresses continued on their feet, legs, arms, and faces to make them all of a piece. Their greasy, uncolored hair hung down, uncombed, with a grim finality. I knelt to see them better, to remember them for all time. The tears that had slipped down my dress left surprisingly dark spots and made the front yard blurry and even more unreal. The world had taken a deep breath and was having doubts about continuing to revolve. The girls had tired of mocking Mama and turned to other means of agitation. One crossed her eyes, stuck her thumbs in both sides of her mouth, and said, "Look here, Annie." Grandmother hummed on, and the apron strings trembled. I wanted to throw a handful of black pepper in their faces, to throw lye on them, to scream that they were dirty, scummy Peckerwoods. But I knew I was as clearly imprisoned behind the scene as the actors outside were confined to their roles. One of the smaller girls did a kind of puppet dance while her fellow clowns laughed at her. But the tall one, who was almost a woman, said something very quietly, which I couldn't hear. They all moved backwards from the porch, still watching Mama. For an awful second, I thought they were going to throw a rock at Mama, who seemed, except for the apron strings, to have turned into stone herself. But the big girl turned her back, bent down, and put her hands flat on the ground. She didn't pick up anything. She simply shifted her weight and did a handstand. Her dirty bare feet and long legs went straight for the sky. Her dress fell down around her shoulders, and she had on no drawers. The slick pubic hair made a brown triangle where her legs came together. She hung in the vacuum of that lifeless morning for only a few seconds, then wavered and tumbled. The other girls clapped her on the back and slapped their hands. Mama changed her song to bread of heaven, feed me until I want no more. I found that I was praying too. How long could Mama hold out? What new indignity would they think of to subject her to? Would I be able to stay out of it? What would Mama really like me to do? Then they were moving out of the yard, on their way to town. They bobbed their heads and shook their slack behinds and turned one at a time. "Bye, Annie. Bye, Annie. Bye, Annie." Mama never turned her head or unfolded her arms, but she stopped singing and said, "Bye, Miss Helen. Bye, Miss Ruth. Bye, Miss Eloise." I burst. A firecracker, July the 4th burst. How could Mama call them Ms., the mean, nasty things? Why couldn't she have come inside the sweet, cool store when I saw them breasting the hill? What did she prove? And then, if they were dirty, mean, and impudent, why did Mom have to call them Ms.? She stood another whole song through and then opened the screen door to look down on me, crying in rage. She looked until I looked up. Her face was a brown moon that shone on me. She was beautiful. Something had happened out there which I couldn't completely understand, but I could see that she was happy. Then she bent down and touched me as the mothers of the church lay hands on the sick and afflicted, and I quieted. "Go wash your face, sister." And she went behind the candy counter and hummed, "Glory, glory, hallelujah, when I lay my burden down." I threw the well water on my face and used the weekday handkerchief to blow my nose. Whatever the contest had been out front, I knew Mama had won. I took the rake back to the front yard. The smudged footprints were easy to erase. I worked for a long time on my new design and lay the rake behind the wash pot. When I came back in the store, I took Mama's hand and we both walked outside to look at the pattern. It was a large heart with lots of hearts growing smaller inside, and piercing from the outer rim to the smallest heart was an arrow. Mama said, "Sister, that's right pretty." Then she turned back to the store and resumed, "Glory, glory, hallelujah, when I lay my burden down."
My name is Lillee Rinaldi. They call me BJ. I'm a psychology major at Augsburg. I'm a fan of reading literature, and I believe it should be passed on as real and authentic as it can. Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. And I'm going to read a poem called Bear. For you, I'd send my body to battle. My body. Let my blood sing of tearing itself apart, hollow cords of white night's intravenous joust. Love, I want and barely know how to do much else. Don't speak to me about raids you could lose on me, the clan of rebel cells who thirst to watch their home burn. Love, let me burn if it means you, and I have one night with no barrier but skin. This isn't about danger, but about faith, about being wasted on your name. If love is a room of broken glass, leave me to dance until my feet are memory. If love is a hole wide enough to be God's mouth, let me plunge into that holy dark and forget the color of light. Love, stay in me until our bodies forget what divides us, until your hands are my hands, and your blood is my blood, and your name is my name, and his and his.
Hi, I'm Lillee Andrews. I'm a first year student here at Augsburg. I'm studying marketing and MIS currently. I'm part of the Global Twin Cities Scholars, and that's where my professor, she gave me this opportunity to be able to do this. Because listening to all of the books that were banned, I kind of found that it was a little weird on the banning of books, and I think that in this country, freedom of speech is such a huge thing, but we're gonna be okay banning books. I just don't think that's fair. This is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Here's the house. It is green and white. It has a red door. It is very pretty. Here's the family. Mother, father, Dick, and Jane live in the green and white house. They are very happy. See Jane? She has a red dress. She wants to play. Who will play with Jane? See the cat? It goes meow, meow. Come and play. Come play with Jane. The kitten will not play. See Mother? Mother is very nice. Mother, will you play with Jane? Mother laughs. Laugh. Mother, laugh. See Father? He's big and strong. Father, will you play with Jane? Father is smiling. Smile. Father, smile. See the dog? Bow wow, goes the dog. Do you want to play with Jane? See the dog run? Run. Dog, run. Look, look. Here comes a friend. The friend will play with Jane. They will play a good game. Play, Jane, play. Here's the house, it is green and white, it has a red door, it is very pretty. Here's the family, mother, father, Dick, and Jane live in the green and white house. They are very happy. See Jane? She has a red dress, she wants to play. Who will play with Jane? See the cat? It goes meow meow. Come play with Jane the kitten. Will not play. See mother? Mother is very nice, mother. Will you play with Jane? Mother laughs. Laugh, mother, laugh. See father? He is big and strong. Father, will you play with Jane? Father is smiling. Smile, father. Smile, see, the dog bow wow. Goes the dog. Do you want to play? Do you want to play with Jane? See the dog. Run, run, dog, run. Look, look. Here comes a friend. The friend will play with Jane. They will play a good game. Play, Jane, play. Quiet as it's kept, there were no marigolds in the fall of 1941. We thought at the time that it was because Pecola was having her father's baby, but the marigolds did not grow. A little examination and much less melancholy would have proved to us that our seeds were not the only ones that did not sprout. Nobody's did. Not even the gardens fronting the lake showed marigolds that year. But so deeply concerned were we with the health and safe delivery of Pecola's baby, we could think of nothing but our own magic. If we planted the seeds and said the right words over them, they would blossom and everything would be all right. It was a long time before my sister and I admitted to ourselves that no green was going to spring from our seeds. Once we knew, our guilt was relieved only by fights and mutual accusations about who was to blame. For years I thought my sister was right. It was my fault. I had planted them too far down in the earth. It never occurred to either of us that the earth itself might have been unyielding. We had dropped our seeds in our own little plot of black dirt, just as Pecola's father had dropped his seeds in his own plot of black dirt. Our innocence and faith were no more productive than his lust or despair. What is clear now is that all of us that hope, fear, lust, love, and grief, nothing remains but Pecola and the unyielding earth. Coley breed love is dead, our innocence too. The seeds shriveled and died, her baby too. There is really nothing more to say except why. But since why is difficult to handle, one must take refuge in how. Autumn. Nuns go by as quiet as lust, and drunken men and sober eyes sing in the lobby of the Greek Hotel. Rosemary Villanacci, our next-door neighbor, who lives above her father's cafe, sits in the 1939 Buick, eating bread and butter. She rolls down the window to tell my sister Frida and me that we can't come in. We stare at her, wanting her bread, but more than that, wanting to poke the arrogance out of her eyes and smash the pride of ownership that curls her chewing mouth. When she comes out of the car, we will beat her up, make red marks on her white skin, and she will cry and ask us, do we want her to pull her pants down? We will say no. We don't know what we should feel or do if she does, but whenever she asks us, we know she's offering us something precious and that our own pride must be asserted by refusing to accept. School has started and Frida and I get new brown stockings and cod liver oil. Grown-ups talk in tired, edgy voices about Zick's coal company and take us along in the evening to the railroad tracks where we fill burlap sacks with the tiny pieces of coal lying about. Later we walk home, glancing back to see the great carloads of slag being dumped, red hot and smoky, into the ravine that skirts the steel mill. The dying fire lights the sky with a dull orange glow. Frida and I lag behind. Staring at the patch of color surrounded by black, it is impossible not to feel a shiver when our feet leave the gravel path and sink into the dead grass in the field. Our house is old, cold, and green. At night, a kerosene lamp lights one large room. The others are braced in darkness. Peopled by roaches and mice, adults do not talk to us. They give us directions. They issue orders without providing information. When we trip and fall down, they glance at us. If we cut or bruise ourselves, they ask us, are we crazy? When we catch colds, they shake their heads in disgust at our lack of consideration. How they ask us, do you expect anybody to get anything done if you are all sick? We cannot answer them. Our illness is treated with contempt, foul, black draught, and castor oil that blunts our minds. When one day after a trip to collect coal, I cough once, loudly. Through bronchial tubes already packed tight with phlegm by my mother's frowns. Great Jesus, get on in that bed. How many times do I have to tell you, wear something on your head? You must be the biggest fool in town, Frida. Get some rags and stuff that window. Frida restuffs the window. I drudge off to bed, full of guilt and self-pity. I lie down in my underwear. The metal in my black garters hurt my legs, but I do not take them off, for it's too cold to lie stockingless. It takes a long time for my body to heat its place in the bed. Once I've generated a silhouette of warmth, I dare not to move. For there is a cold place 1/2 inch in any direction. No one speaks to me or asks how I feel. In an hour or two my mother comes. Her hands are large and rough. When she rubs the Vicks salve on my chest, I am rigid with pain. She takes 2 fingers, full of it at the time, and massages my chest until I am faint. Just when I think I will tip over into a scream, she scoops out a little of the salve on her forefinger and puts it in my mouth, telling me to swallow. A hot flannel is wrapped around my neck and chest. I am covered with heavy quilts and ordered to sweat, which I do promptly. Later, I throw up, and my mother says, What did you puke on the bed clothes for? Do you have sense enough to hold your head out the bed? Now look what you did. You think I got mine? You think I got time for nothing but washing up your puke? The puke swaddles down the pillow into the sheet, green-gray. With freckles of orange, it moves like the inside of an uncooked egg, stubbornly clinging on its own mass, refusing to break up and be removed. How I wonder, can it be so neat and nasty at the same time? My mother's voice drowns on. She's not talking to me. She's talking to the puke, but she's calling it my name, Claudia. She wipes it up as best she can and puts a scratchy towel over the large wet place. I lie down again. The rags have fallen from the window crack and the air is cold. I dare not call her back and am reluctant to leave my warmth. My mother's anger humiliates me. Her words chafe my cheeks and I am crying. I do not know that she is not angry at me, but at my sickness. I believe she despises my weakness for letting the sickness take hold. By and by I will not get sick. I will refuse to, but for now I am crying. I am making more snot, but I cannot stop. My sister comes in. Her eyes are full of sorrow. She sings to me. When the deep purple falls over sleepy garden walls, someone thinks of me. I doze, thinking of plums and walls and someone. But was it really like that? As painful as I remember, only mildly, or rather, it was a productive and fructifying pain. Love, thick and dark as Alaga syrup, eased up into that cracked window. I could smell it, taste it, sweet, musty, with an edge of winter green in its base. Everywhere in that house, it stuck, along with my tongue, to the frosted window panes. It coated my chest, along with the salve, and when the flannel came undone in my sleep, the clear, sharp curves of air outlined its presence on my throat. And in the night, when the coughing was dry and tough, feet padded into the room, hands repinned the flannel, readjusted the quilt, and rested a moment on my forehead. So when I think of autumn, I think of somebody with hands who does not want me to die.